I've read all the impact statements that were submitted earlier and listened carefully to all the input here today. And it is truly appreciated that you took the time to stay with this case and to provide me with input. I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation and carefully considered all the facts of the case and the law, but my comments are actually going to be very brief because most of it's going to be in writing. I have a 22-page memorandum that is going to be attached to the sentencing order. And why am I doing it in writing? To emphasize the fact that determining the appropriate sentence in any case, and in this case, is a legal analysis. It's applying the rule of law to the facts of an individual and specific case. And that is why, as opposed to trying to being profound here on the record, I prefer that you read the legal analysis that explains how I determined the sentence in this case. What the case is, or what the sentence is not based on, is emotion or sympathy. But at the same time, I want to acknowledge the deep and tremendous pain that all the families are feeling, especially the Floyd family. You have our sympathies. And I acknowledge and hear the pain that you are feeling. I acknowledge the pain not only of those in this courtroom, but the Floyd family who are outside this courtroom and other members of the community. It has been painful throughout Hennepin County, throughout the state of Minnesota, and even the country. But most importantly, we need to recognize the pain of the Floyd family. I'm not going to attempt to be profound or clever because it's not the appropriate time. I'm not basing my sentence also on public opinion. I'm not basing it on any attempt to send any messages. A trial court judge, the job of a trial court judge is to apply the law to specific facts and to deal with individual cases. And so, Mr. Chauvin, as to count one, based on the verdict of the jury finding you guilty of unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony under Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 2 paren 1, it is the judgment of the court that you now stand convicted of that offense. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute section 609.04, counts 2 and 3 will remain unadjudicated as they are lesser offenses of count 1. As sentenced for count 1, the court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270. That is a 10-year addition to the presumptive sentence of 150 months. This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd. You are granted credit for 199 days already served. Pay the mandatory surcharge of $78 to be paid from prison wages. You're prohibited from possessing firearms, ammunition, or explosives for the remainder of your life. Provide a DNA sample as required by law. Register as a predatory offender as required by law. And then you will receive a copy of the order and also the attached memorandum explaining the court's analysis. Anything further from the state?
If this needs to be said, we just ask that it be executed forthwith.
Defendant is remanded to the custody of the sheriff to be transported back to the DOC or whichever custody is currently holding him. Anything for the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Derek Chauvin has been sentenced to 22 and a half years for the murder of George Floyd. Will serve 15 years of that because you served 2/3 of the time sentenced. Let's get reactions starting with you, Ellie Honig.
Justice is imperfect. This is a serious sentence. Derek Chauvin will be in prison 15 years. He's 45 now until he's 60. That said, I think this is light. I think the judge should have sentenced to more. Minnesota guidelines say you can double the 15 years. If there's one aggravator, this judge found 4 aggravators and didn't really come super close to doubling it.
Van.
Very disappointing. Very disappointing. 15 years. I know people doing 15 years for nothing. I mean, for victimless crimes of drug possession. Very disappointing. The level of any one of those aggravators, what this man did, there should have been the maximum of the maximum, and this is disappointing. I don't think it's going to cause outrage, but it's a punch in the gut. This guy's life was worth more than 15 years. It was, and what that officer did is worth more than 15 years. And law enforcement across the country should look at something like this and say, look, you can't do this type of stuff. You're never going to come back home. It's disappointing.
Jennifer.
Yeah, I mean, the sentence isn't 15 years, though. The sentence is 22 and a half years. So the 2/3 is good behavior. You know, that's a legal matter. The judge legally can't consider that when imposing sentence, right? He's got to impose a sentence that he feels is appropriate, and that sentence was 22 and a half years. That said, I do think also that it was light, like you all do.
Commissioner,
30 years would have been better.
Commissioner Ramsey's response. 22 and a half years, your reaction.
I thought it would be somewhere in between 25 and 30 is really what I kind of thought it would wind up being. It's 22 and a half. That's the judge's decision. Like everything else, you live with it. But as far as messages go, 22 and a half years, if you're the one that has to do it, is a lot of time. And so I think it's very clear that, you know, it's a new day now. I mean, police officers are going to be held accountable, and that's important and ought to be held accountable. This particular case is one of those that, I mean, it was just so egregious that it's just, there's no way you can justify it in any manner, shape, or form, in my opinion. Yeah. A little disappointing, but again, you know, that's a judge's decision. He made the decision. You live with it.
Elliot, let me get to Elliot on this 22-page memo and explaining this. Is that typical?
Yeah, judges in big cases will issue a memo explaining their exact reasoning. One thing to keep in mind, still 2 federal indictments pending against Derek Chauvin, right? Yeah. One for George Floyd and one for the 14-year-old he assaulted with a flashlight. That time can be more than this, or it can be what we call consecutive, especially for the 14-year-old, because that's a separate incident, meaning it can run back to back, so it's not over yet for Derek Chauvin.
Go ahead. I was going to say that you have Anita Gupta, you've got Christian Clark, you've got other people in the Department of Justice looking at this. The feds can come in and do more, and they should do more, because this is not justice. A lot of pictures outside of the courthouse here. Reaction to what we just heard, 22 and a half years for Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd. Looks like they're praying there. Jennifer Rogers, last word to you. The impact of what we heard today, those families saying that we heard from Philonise Floyd saying that we have the life sentence. Regardless of the sentence for Derek Chauvin, they have the life sentence.
Yeah, I mean, there's never any end for those families. I mean, their loved one has been taken away. So, you know, you hope that they are happy with the result in some way, but, you know, it doesn't solve the problem for them.
Yeah.